If a user does not have access to a dataset within a specific drug program, then the drug program will not be presented to the user on the VA Hub homepage. There are two ways in which a user can be granted access to a dataset. The first way is to give access to the drug program. If access permissions are granted to the drug program, then all the datasets within the drug program will be visible to the user on the homepage for VA Hub. The other way to do this is to actually give access to a specific dataset within a drug program. If this is the case, then when the user logs it into VA Hub on the homepage, they are only presented with the specific datasets to which they have been granted access. We are now going to look to granting access to the drug program training and the dataset training_1. In the Chrome web browser, type your VA Security web application URL. This ends in :444. You are presented with the VA Security homepage. Click on My Analytics. This takes you to the Analytics page where you're presented with drug programs, clinical studies and datasets. We're going to select drug program, and from the drug program we're going to select training. We are now presented with some information about the drug program, the clinical studies within the drug program, users. At the moment there's no users, and if you click on the option Edit, you are then presented with a list of all the React users that are set up in Azure. From here, select your user. And drag and drop the user to the appropriate role. Once the user has been moved to the appropriate role, permissions will be granted. If we now go back to training, we open up the drug program again. We can now see one user has been added. If we click on Show, this will then present us with a list of all the users who now have access to this drug program. Because we've given access to the drug program, the user should automatically have access to the dataset within that drug program. So if we click on Datasets, we find the appropriate training dataset associated with that drug program. If we click on the dataset, you can see that there's one user. If we look to the user who has access, the list is presented, and you can see that because the user has been given access to the drug program, they automatically have access to the study dataset. The user can now log into VA Hub to see whether or not they have access to the drug program and dataset which has just been granted. As you can see here on the home page previously, training drug program is not present. If we refresh the page, we can now see that the drug program training is available, and the dataset training_1 is also available to the user. If we log back into VA Hub, we can now see, we can now look to add a dataset to a drug program that a user already has access to. So if we click on Dummy, the user currently has access to one dataset, biomarkers ctDNA_NoMut1. We will now look to add another dataset for access to that drug program. We will now look to granting access to a dataset within a drug program that a user does not have access to. So if we log back into VA Security, click My Analytics, and select the data set that we want to add a user to. So if we select firstly, we can actually go to the drug program which holds that data set. The drug program was dummy. So if we click on dummy, we can see that there are a number of clinical data sets within this study, but the user only had access to one, so we can actually check that the user is not on the user list. And that confirms that the user does not have access to the actual drug program. If we now click on the data sets, and we select the drug program data set to which we want to add a user, if we click Edit, and from the React user list, select the user you want to grant permissions to that particular study, and drag and drop to the appropriate role. You can see the user has now been added. If we go back into the study, we see that the user number has gone from 50 to 51. If we now click Show, we can see that the user has been added. If at any point you wanted to remove a user from the either a dataset or a drug program, click Edit and just drag and drop the user back to the React user list. If we then go back to the dataset, you can see that the user number has now dropped back down to 50. If we click Show, we can see that that user has now been removed. So we're going to add the user back in again. So we'll click Edit, drag and drop, user is there. Number has gone back up to 51. We can see that the user is now in the user list. The user can now log back into VA Hub and see whether or not they have access to the study dataset to which they've just been granted access. So if we refresh the page, we can see that currently we've just got access to the one dataset. If we refresh the page, click on Dummy, we can now see that the dataset to which we granted access is visible. We select the dataset and click Start Analysis. You can see that access has been granted.